The college football playoff quarterfinal at the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. This is number 4 seeded Arizona State taking on the 5th seeded Texas Longhorns. This game will be 1 o'clock Eastern time on January 1st. This is going to be an awesome game. The line right now is Texas by about 13.5. The total is around 51.5. Now, Texas, Arizona State, only 2 times ever have they played. This will be the second time. Their first time was back in 2007. Texas won that game 52-34. And what's ironic about it is that Jamal Charles, Colt McCoy, all these amazing players on that team, I can't remember. Can't believe it's been nearly 20 years since Colt McCoy and Jamal Charles played. It feels like yesterday, but I digress. 161 rushing yards for Jamal Charles, a couple touchdowns. This will be the 4th time the Peach Bowl will host a college football playoff game. And the good news for Texas is that the SEC has won each of the last 3. Georgia beat Ohio State in the 2022 season. LSU beat Oklahoma in 2019. And then Alabama beat Washington in 2016. So Atlanta has been a favorable destination for SEC teams for quite a while now. Texas trying to make it a clean sweep by going 4-0 in the CFP era at the Peach Bowl. Question number 1. Can the Texas rushing attack stay aggressive? Now, Texas, they won the game against Clemson by running the ball tremendously well. Now, they created a couple big plays in that game. Jaden Blue got loose a couple times, and they did lose Trey Wisner, who got a little banged up in the game, but all totals, 292 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, really an impressive performance along the line of scrimmage for the Texas Longhorns. And if you look at how things have gone as the season's gone along, in their last 4 games for Texas, their best rushing games this year have come in 3 of those 4. The one exception would be against Georgia in the SEC championship game. But you look at the performance against Kentucky, you look at the performance against Texas A&M, and then most recently the game against Clemson, they have been really, really solid running the football, in large part due to Trey Wisner. Trey Wisner has been kind of the star of the show, was against Texas A&M. But after he got banged up, Jaden Blue stepped right in, thought to yourself, all right, there'll be no drop-off whatsoever. Now, it appears that Trey Wisner could have come back in the game, but it just didn't really need to happen. Because after Clemson cut the lead to 7, Jaden Blue goes off for a 77-yard touchdown run. And those two became the 4th duo to rush for 100 yards in the same college football playoff game in their performance against Clemson. So we know that Texas, with all the conversation that is centered around Quinn Ewers and his play and how much he needs to do and what all is wrong with the passing attack, that's fine. This is a run-first offense. So highlight that first and foremost before we move to the other tentacles of how Texas can really attack you. It's pretty dang impressive. Question number 2, and you can make a case this might be the most important question in the game. Can Texas bottle up Cam Scavo, the outstanding running back for the Arizona State Sun Devils? He finished 5th in the Heisman Trophy voting for a reason. He's the first player to have 1,500 rush yards and 500 receiving yards in a season since 2016. He was the last Power 5 conference player to do that before Scavo was Christian McCaffrey in 2015. So 1,500, 500 is pretty rare air. Scavo doing it this year for the first time in quite a while. 9 years. I was surprised. I thought maybe that number was attainable, but Christian McCaffrey is obviously out of this world back in 2015 with Stanford. So it's rare to see that type of productivity through the air from running backs, but Scavo can certainly do it. And just to put things into perspective with how good he's been this year, okay? These are just his rankings and some very important stats as it relates to running backs. We're not going to go through the numbers. Well, he's got this, he's got that. Well, right now he's 2nd in missed tackles behind Ashton Genty. He's 3rd in yards after contact behind Ashton Genty and Jadarian Price. He is 5th in rushing yards total. He is 6th in rushing touchdowns. Now, the good thing about Scavo, is that I think a lot of what Ashton Genty's done has kind of been as a result of his just spectacular skill. Scavo doesn't have to do it all by himself. Like their run scheme is really good. It's pretty advanced. They do a bunch of different things offensively in the run game, but his offensive line is also a very veteran group. This is a group that averages 320 pounds across the board. They have 129 career starts. These guys have played a lot of football, and they deserve an awful lot of credit for how they have impacted the identity of this team. They also need to account for Scavo as a pass catcher, because if you look at Sam Levitt and Scavo, they're one of the best quarterback to running back combos in the FBS. They get a first down or a touchdown on 55% of their completions. You also, too, look at outside of Des Reed, the outstanding back for Pitt, Scavo's kind of in a league of his own as far as what he can contribute in the passing game. He's really good on the option routes. He's really good in the flat. They'll find a million different ways to get him involved. And I would be really surprised if Cam Scavo doesn't have 30 touches in this game. I think he's their best player. They're a little bit banged up at wide receiver. More on that here in just a moment. So he's going to have to carry a really heavy load. But the good news is he's been able to do that time and time again this year. Question number 3. Is Texas beginning to open up things in the passing game just a little bit? Now, we know that most of what Quinn Ewers does in this offense is within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. All right. A lot of that is going to be quick, short completions. They have very athletic and dynamic guys on the outside with the ball in their hands. So they want to get it to those guys in space and let them do work with it. 20 of Quinn's 24 passes against Clemson came with it 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, which is pretty ridiculous, right? But if you look, they're just a little bit further than they've been. He averaged about 7.2 air yards per attempt against Clemson. That's his 5th highest mark of the season. He's had 5 games here in the last 6 outings where that air yards per attempt has started to go up a little bit. So more and more aggressive in the back half of the season, and you would anticipate that only continuing as the level of defense that he'll face going forward continues to improve. There was only, a couple times where he tried it downfield. He hit one of those throws against Clemson. That was to Matthew Golden. And if they're going to try some throws downfield, it's really been Matthew Golden that's been on the receiving end. He has more receptions and touchdowns on deep throws than the rest of the team combined. So if they start to open it up, you would anticipate a slightly heavier load being put on the shoulders of Matthew Golden. Question number 4. Can Arizona State's passing attack get after some of the holes that might exist in the Texas secondary? Now, Sam Levitt is really awesome, by the way. If you have not had a chance to watch Arizona State's offense, Scavo's amazing. He gets all the credit. He gets all the hype, understandably so. But I think Sam Levitt might be one of the most underrated players remaining in the college football playoff field. He's athletic. He's accurate. He's not afraid to take off and be involved in the run game. I think he's got better as the season's gone along with some of the touch passes that he's had to make down the stretch. So I'm really encouraged by his progress, and I'm really encouraged about how he can level up in a setting like this. Now, this passing attack suffered a pretty significant blow when their top wide receiver, Jordan Tyson, was out indefinitely prior to the Big 12 championship game. But in his absence, some other guys really stepped up. You saw Melquan Stovall go for 91 yards. In that game, he was averaging about 13 yards per game. You saw Malik McClain step up with 43 yards. You saw Xavier Guillory step up with 2 touchdowns in that game. Prior to the Big 12 title, Guillory had just 3 touchdowns on the season. So to have 2 in one game goes to show you that in the absence of Tyson, it does appear like Arizona State has some guys that can step up. Now, they haven't been asked to, because Tyson had such a significant workload in the first 12 games. But now in his absence, guys are going to have to go and take over. Because if you look at how things went for Texas against Clemson, Cade Klubnik had some opportunities. Now, they scored 24 points. They were the 3rd team this year to score 20-plus points against Texas. Georgia did it twice. And then Vanderbilt did it there. They did score late. So take it for what you will. But still, 24 points is 24 points. The thing that was even more eye-popping is the fact that Clemson was able to generate 412 yards of offense. And the Longhorns had not allowed more than 329 yards in the game this year. They had allowed just 4 passing touchdowns in the regular season. Cade Klubnik had 3. So I do think they have a really good safety play. Michael Taft, Andrew Makuba, those guys do a great job. I think Jade Barron on the outside's awesome. I think Manny Muhammad's really good as well. But like any great defense, they're going to force you to win one-on-ones on the outside. And if you can do that, you have a real chance of being able to move the ball through the air and generate some chunk yardage, because that's what Clemson did, but Clemson has elite wideouts. Does Arizona State? We will find out. Question number 5. With so many different options, can Arizona State slow down this Texas offense? Now, you give Steve Sarkisian time, and he's got plenty of it. I know the holiday season, people are traveling all over the place. I would imagine always with Steve Sarkisian, I imagine him sitting there at Christmas dinner and drawing up plays. I just think he's that good. He's that creative. He is so good when it comes to creating matchups, and he knows how to use specific motions to exploit some of the areas of your defense where you might become pretty vulnerable. And he's done it throughout the regular season too, but with extra time, those motions seemingly get more creative, and those matchups that are created get more favorable because they're going to motion on 56% of their snaps. I mean, it's one of the highest in the entire country. They ran motion on 60% of their snaps against Clemson. On those plays involving motion, they had 373 yards of offense and 5 touchdowns. So we know this is going to be a group that will absolutely utilize motion and create matchups as a result. And one of those matchups that becomes a huge problem is Gunnar Helm. Gunnar Helm's a tight end for the Texas Longhorns. He had a touchdown there at the end of the first half against Clemson. But he is really, really good and has become such an important piece of this offense on early down and distance. He's 6'5". He's 250 plus pounds, and he's now first in Longhorns history in catches by a tight end and second in yards and touchdowns by a tight end in the season. So he's had a terrific year and will take some of the pressure off Isaiah Bond, DeAndre Moore, Matthew Golden, all those incredible weapons that they have. And then Wisner, of course, as a running back involved in the passing game as well. So Arizona State's going to have to kind of pick their poison, because these motions and shifts, they're going to find matchups in Arizona State's secondary that will be a problem. So Arizona State's going to have to shift and adjust and make sure they're really smart with disguising their coverages, because if they're not, they have a chance to get chopped down pretty quickly. And then question number 6, can Arizona State force a few mistakes? Here's kind of where I'm at as it relates to evaluating this matchup. I think Texas, if they play a clean game, they're going to win the game. I think they'll win the game comfortably. But I also think that Texas has been a team this year that I don't trust that much when it comes to keeping the clean sheet offensively. They've turned it over 23 times this year. That is 122nd in college football. So they'll give it up and they'll let you take it. And Arizona State, so far this season, has been pretty opportunistic. They are plus 14 in turnover margin. That's among the best in all of college football. They have also forced 22 turnovers while only turning it over 8 times themselves. Here's the problem, though, as it relates to turning Texas over. If you're going to make Quinn Ewers throw it into traffic, if you're going to force him into making some bad decisions, you better have some guys up front along the defensive front that can cause some havoc. And that's not really where Arizona State excels. Now, the 2 games where he was most careless with the football were the 2 games against Georgia. And then I guess if you want to go a layer further, did have a couple of questionable decisions made against A&M. Now, those 2 teams, they have a relentless pass rush. Arizona State doesn't have that. That's a huge problem in this game. They generate pressure just 30% of the time. That is 109th in college football. And most of the time when they do generate pressure, it's because they've brought some blitz. So that's a problem. If Arizona State can't create a little bit of a pass rush, are you going to be able to put enough pressure on Quinn Ewers to force him to throw it into traffic? That's a question that I'm not sure we're going to get the answer to. Trends in the game. Double-digit favorites in the CFP are 9-0 outright and 7-2 against the spread. The biggest upset in the CFP era was when Ohio State, as a 9-point dog, beat Bama back in the 2014 semifinal. The good news is for Arizona State that they are 11-2 against the spread this season. So they've been one of the best teams in the country as far as covering the spread and making things interesting. I'll take Texas here. I think they're going to contain Arizona State. I'm expecting it to be kind of a lower scoring game, but I would not feel super comfortable about laying the points. Just saying, would not feel real good about laying 14 here or whatever it ends up being. I would not be surprised at all if Arizona State has kind of a backdoor cover type of situation. So be careful if you want to lay them, but I think Texas will punch their ticket to the semifinal.